Hey everyone, I'm Ashes,
And I'm Will. And
and this
this
is
is
Ashes
Ashes
and
and
Will
Will
Do
Do Disney.
Disney.
Each week, one of us will tell the other the history, facts, and stories behind the rides and attractions of Disney that have made special memories for generations.
Keep in mind that Ashes and Will Do Disney is not affiliated with or employed by the Walt Disney Company, and our views and opinions do not reflect theirs.
Now it's time to sit back, relax, and put on your ears because it's time for Ashes and Will Do Disney. Oh, hey, Ashes.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Doing all right. Been kind of a busy week. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so glad to be done with my stretch of work. It was an exhausting weekend, and I'm excited to do this with you so that way get a little bit of Disney magic and fun in my life.
Right. It's definitely been a long weekend with your work schedule and with me having to
Very.
go do my job for the week. So I'm also very excited to be doing Disney conversations.
Oh, yeah,
Of course, yeah, I'll never say no to a Disney conversation.
of
So
course.
you had the trivia for me last week
Yes.
and week after that.
Yeah.
I came up with something for you to talk about this time, though.
Uh-oh.
There's always those online quizzes of which this are you, which that are you.
Yeah.
I took a quiz of which Disney couple are you.
Oh,
And this is from the Oh My Disney website, so this is an official which Disney couple are you?
official.
And I wanted to see if you get the same answers I did, or not necessarily the same
Or
answers,
like
but the
the
same
same
couple.
couple. Okay, cool.
Exactly, you
I'm
got
actually
it.
really interested to see this.
Right. First question. It's a bright sunny day. Me and my date are getting some ice cream, gardening, taking a stroll through the park, reading books inside, stopping crimes, going for a run, visiting a museum, or walking on the beach.
Oh, well, I was going to say gardening until the beach came up, so beach it is.
Beach it is. My favorite animal is a fox, a mouse, a dog, a kraken, a lion, a horse, a jaguar, or a reindeer.
I'm going to go with Kraken. I'm assuming our answers have been the same thus far.
I'm not saying anything yet.
Okay, okay.
If I could eat one food for the rest of my life, it would be ice cream, pizza, pad thai, steak, pasta, falafel, dumplings, or fried chicken.
Ugh, I think I'm going to have to go with pad thai.
Okay? My favorite Disney prince is Prince Edward, Aladdin, The Prince, Prince Naveen, Prince Eric, Prince Philip, Beast, or Prince Charming.
I've never actually really been a big fan of almost any of the Disney princes. Who is Prince Edward is you don't know either?
I haven't watched a lot of the classics in recent history, so
I don't even know who Prince Edward is. I'm gonna go with Aladdin, even though, he lies a bit. Whatever. He seems, I guess, okay.
okay. I would like to travel by boat, plane, car, hot air balloon, foot, carriage, train, or sleigh.
I mean, I guess it would really depend on where I'm traveling, but let's just go with boat.
Pick a Disney sidekick. Pegasus, Trusty, Pumbaa, Jack the Monkey, Goofy, Friar Tuck, Zero, or Frozone.
Oh, well, I gotta go with Zero
Because we have a dog named
because we
Zero
have a dog named Zero. Wait, who's Jack the monkey?
from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh,
They named
that
the monkey
Jack.
after
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jack.
yeah. Yes. Okay, pew. I was like, wait.
You were about to disappoint me real hard
I
there.
know, I know. I got it. Okay.
I would love to live in a quaint cottage in a busy city, on a tropical island, in a fancy
I
mansion.
mean, you can just stop. I already know it's going to
There's
be
other
Tropical
choices, you need to
Island.
hear them.
Okay, okay.
By the beach, in an old castle, in the countryside, on a cloud.
I'm still gonna stick with my tropical
Okay.
island. Like that is not only by the beach, but by the beach could be a lot of things.
I would like to have a whole island to myself, honestly.
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
Okay, in your current state, you are feeling energized, restless, cheerful, silly, wistful, lucky, fierce, or happy.
Hmm. I was just gonna go with sleepy, but that wasn't a
It's not a
choice.
choice.
We'll just go with happy.
Okay. I love the color gold, black, green, blue, white, red, tan, or yellow.
Black.
It's movie night. I'm going to watch The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Incredibles, Pirates of the Caribbean, Lady and the Tramp, Robin Hood, Mickey's Christmas Carol, The Lion King, or Hercules.
Oh man, it's a toss up between Nightmare Before Christmas and Pirates of the Caribbean, but I think I'll go with Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay, one more question. Actually, nope, that was it. My results when I took this quiz, and we did have a couple of different answers. I said I would eat pizza if I
Well,
had
I
to eat
knew
something
you
for the
wouldn't
rest of my
eat
life.
pad thai.
Nope, nope. And I did pick Prince Naveen as my favorite
Well,
prince.
that's because you love Princess and the Frog.
I like Princess and the Frog. That's one of my
And
favorite
actually, he
animated
is a pretty
movies.
good prince, let's be
Right.
real. Okay.
But my results were Will and Elizabeth from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay, nice.
Your results are Will and Elizabeth from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yay!
So we had close enough answers that we were the same couple.
We can stay married.
We can stay married. We don't have to end it all over a Disney quiz.
Phew. Okay, well, what have you got for me today?
What I've got today, first thing I want you to do is close your eyes and imagine you're on your way to the parks.
Okay.
What is the first thing that you're thinking of?
Well, the first thing I thought of was I was wondering if we were in Florida or California. But aside from that, I think I picture walking up, like when we went to California Disneyland, and we're walking up through like security in between, and we're right in between both California Adventureland and Disneyland.
Okay. Generally, when I'm walking up to the parks or I'm going to the parks, I start thinking about my favorite ride, which for me generally is Haunted Mansion, and that's probably the first thing we're going to be doing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess I was being very realistic with it, but
Sure,
yes,
sure. You were thinking of the fine details walking
yes.
up. But there's another feature of the parks that maybe you don't think about right away, but when you do, it's something that stands out above almost everything else in the park.
Okay.
Any ideas so far?
I was almost gonna think about like just some like the little ambiance like details that Disney does, like the music and the paint color selections and even like the smells.
Okay, not quite. You are getting a little too detail oriented there.
Again, I'm far more detail oriented of a person than you,
I look at
so
the broader picture typically.
yes.
Let me give you a couple more hints here. Famous catchphrase: please stand clear of the doors.
Okay, got it.
Our son, instead of having a regular model of this, has
Yes,
the
it's
electric
the
version.
monorail.
It's the monorail, or Simpsons monorail. Monorail.
Yes.
So the monorail is one of the most iconic and famous features of the Disney parks.
Yes, absolutely.
And it opened on June 14th, 1959.
Okay.
But we have to get to the idea of where did the monorail come from. So we're going to look at Walt's vision of the future.
I'm going to assume that the monorail came about before the buses because I hate the bus
Because you
system.
hate the buses.
I know, I
Not
do.
a fan of the buses either.
Okay.
Walt always had that reputation as a forward thinker. He was always thinking about the problems of his park before the park even opened and before the problems could present themselves. And a problem for all theme parks, not just Disneyland or Disney World, was traffic. And that again was a problem that Walt had anticipated from the get-go. He knew that if his park was going to be a destination spot, then he would have to account for the amount of people and the crowds and what he needed to do to ease their movement around the attractions. Walt started to get the idea for this solution on a trip to Germany with Lillian. where he discovered their most famous transportation system, the floating train. There's a specific name for the floating train in Germany. I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to even attempt to. I'll put the name in the description of the episode. But Walt got so obsessed with their transportation system, as we mentioned, he was obsessed with trains. He loved trains. So, of course, he sees this new train and this new innovative way to travel in Germany. So he started to interact with German railway employees, which was a task that proved to be difficult for both parties because Walt didn't speak German. However, this didn't stop Walt from learning what he could about the country's premier travel system. The structure of this floating train in Germany was so sturdy that it even survived bombings during World War II. And it's the oldest electric railway with elevated cars in the world. And I'm going to just kind of describe the way a floating train or a hanging train works, because it wasn't quite what I thought it was when I was reading it based on the description.
I mean, you think floating train, you want to think something like futuristic of like legit just a train floating, but
that's not what it is.
Yeah, clearly that's not what it is.
And my original thought reading the description was that it was almost on just a cable and it was floating above a track. There was a track for stabilization, but it was kind of going just a little bit above it.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. It's basically a monorail, but the track is on top of the train.
Oh, okay. So it's okay. I get it.
Yeah. And the biggest benefit of trains is that they can get travelers from point A to point B in the most efficient manner. We know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Highways can't just go straight. They have to curve and angle due to regulatory reasons. Above ground transportation systems such as the floating train don't have those same restrictions and can get more people to a destination in a shorter amount of time. The suspension railway in Germany moves 25 million people a year over an 8.3 mile track. The train track is 4 stories high, which eliminates the potential to interfere with regular car traffic.
Well, that's nice.
Right. I was thinking about when we were coming back from our trip over the summer, we had to stop for a solid 20 minutes waiting for that train to go across the tracks.
Yeah.
You have those above ground trains 4 stories in the air.
Right.
That's not a problem. The train can go and cars can go.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, though. It sounds terrifying seeing a train 4 stories in the air, just like...
Especially hanging there with the track above you, not below you.
Yeah.
I agree. There's a total of 4 stops on the trip. That makes a full ride take about 30 minutes. Walt knew he wanted to use this same technology in the parks. He also wanted to use his trains as a means to make the guests associate the monorail with the parks. That is to say, he wanted people to feel like once they stepped on the monorail, they were officially at the parks. This sensation is due to the fact that there aren't many monorails in our day-to-day travel. The monorail is a unique method of transportation that even saying the word makes most people think of Disney parks.
Yeah, and I think even now, I mean, we're coming up on 40, 50 years after, over 50, almost 60 years after Walt's death. I still can't think of many other monorail type systems anywhere in the US.
I've learned of one other that we'll get to here in just a little bit, but I had no clue about it, even though I've been to this place before.
Okay.
Had no clue about it. Now let's talk about how one time when Lillian got an upset tummy.
Poor girl.
Walt was excited to tell Lillian about bringing the hanging train to California. He wanted to use the exact same technology in his parks, but they ran into a problem. When Lillian rode the train in Germany, the circular motion gave her motion sickness. Here's where we learn the difference between a monorail and a hanging train, which first off, let me just say, I'm going to tip my hat to Lillian for taking one for the team and getting that upset tummy. Because I've looked at the pictures of the hanging train and how that works. I would get motion sickness too. I wouldn't want to do the hanging train.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of things that Lillian has done for the whole entire Disney empire that she just doesn't get enough credit for.
They seem like such little things, but they just changed the trajectory of the whole path that Walt took, that we got our products that we've got today.
Yeah.
And I am forever grateful to her for it.
Legit, just the fact that we don't have Mortimer.
Yeah, right. Not as the main character anyway.
Yeah.
A monorail rides on a beam for stabilization, which creates little to no side-to-side movement. the hanging train is suspended above the railing, so it's going to have more side-to-side swaying. Walt had to come up with a variation on the architecture of the German train because he figured if the motion sickness could happen to Lillian, it could also happen to park guests. Guests who get sick because of something in the park means they're not going to spend money to go there. The other problem Walt noticed was the scenery. On the German train, the steel girders holding up the track were the main thing to look at on the road, which is not aesthetically pleasing. There was no view other than steel girders.
Yeah.
So motion sickness and obstructed views of hanging train pushed Walt to move more towards the route of a railed train.
Makes sense.
Makes sense, right? Tell me what you know about Alweg.
About what?
Alweg, A-L-W-E-G.
I'm going to go with a whole lot of nothing.
Fair enough, because I had a whole lot of zero knowledge on Alweg before I researched this. So here's a man by the name of Axel Wenner Gren. He is the patent holder, or was the patent holder, for the monorail design. He is a Swedish industrialist and one of the wealthiest people in the world in the 1930s. He was the owner of Electrolux, which was a home appliance manufacturer, second largest appliance maker behind Whirlpool.
They made vacuums too. I used to sell them when
You did.
I was like 18 years old.
Now, Axel was finding it hard to remove his assets from Germany after World War II. The German government made economic sanctions designed to prevent wealthy people from leaving the country in large droves. So he used his German assets as seed money to make the Alweg, a play on the letters of his name, for his monorail system. This idea... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, does this lead us into like Amway type kind of things, or is it just different than Alway?
It's Alweg, A-L-W-E-G.
E-G, gotcha. Okay, sorry. Go on.
This idea had the train run on a notched rail to reduce the side-to-side motion that caused nausea in travelers. But no one in Germany wanted to use his idea. To get local and international governments interested, he built his own prototype of the monorail with a station at the end of the track. England and Brazil thought about implementing the Alweg monorail system. Ultimately, both countries passed on the idea. And even though Wenner-Gren spent time perfecting the system, no one wanted to use it as their primary travel system. Walt Disney, known for his interest in new technology and his lack of anyone to answer to, loved his idea for Disneyland. Let's talk about how the monorail works. There's a giant beam that makes one track, and it stabilizes and guides the train along its path. It's propelled by electricity. The wheels on the side carriage use the kinetic energy generated by the adjoining buses. Additional tire clamps to reduce motion sickness limits the bouncing inside the train cart. This also helps guide the monorail. Because it's using electricity, it's more cost efficient and energy efficient. And since the tires are rubberized, there's less noise pollution. Standard railway systems do not use rubber tires. And this was done so guests on the monorail wouldn't be distracted from what they were doing in the park. So you're walking around the parks, you're not going to hear a train screeching around because it's that quiet.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really noticed hearing the monorail anytime we've gone to
Really,
Disney
unless
World.
I'm on it, I don't really notice it.
Yeah, at all. And riding on it, it definitely does not give me that feeling of motion sickness or anything like that. It's a smooth ride.
It's a
for
very
sure.
smooth ride. It doesn't have those abrupt stops, even like the trams at the airport. They have those quick stops where you're grabbing on and trying
Yeah.
not to fall over. I don't ever have that feeling on the monorail. Walt didn't just see the monorail as a special way to move around the park, but saw it as a preview for park goers of the future of transportation. So yes, it was meant to get people around the park efficiently, but Walt, in his interest in science and future technology, was using it as a means to show guests, hey, this isn't just for the parks. This is how people are going to travel in their daily lives.
Maybe one day, Walt. There's still hope.
There's still hope. There's still hope. Let's talk about the Mark I. The Mark designation started in 1959. The higher the number, the newer the model. and there's a plaque at Disneyland paying homage to the Mark I. The monorail was rededicated in 2004, and Disney didn't completely copy the Allweg model. He actually used a 3/5 scale version. And a gentleman by the name of Bob Gurr was brought on to help with the design of the monorail, because he understood he wasn't just there to help design the monorail, but to market it and sell it, because the monorail is a sight to be seen. It was going to be one of the first things guests saw when walking into the park, so it had to be an attention grabber, not just a means of transportation. The original Allweg design was not appealing to the eye. Gurr described the original design as a loaf of bread with a slot in the middle sitting on a stick. It's pretty plain.
That's very descriptive, though, for a train.
I literally just pictured a gray, boxy cart.
I'm just literally picturing a loaf of bread on a stick, so...
Yeah. The general consensus was that if they implemented the Allweg design of the monorail, it would not have lasted as an attraction. As you mentioned in the Space Mountain episode, space exploration was a hot topic in the 1950s. Gurr designed the monorail to look like a rocket ship rather than a loaf of bread. And he says he got the idea for the design after watching an episode of Buck Rogers. The design of the Disneyland monorail was unique and separated it from other monorails, making it a novelty. The technical term for Gurr's style is called Googie style, which means exaggerated modernism. Although the press initially predicted the monorail to be a failure, they changed their tune when they got word of the architecture behind the attraction. They went from reporting criticism to celebrating the technology and the design. Gurr's work on the Mark I gained him popularity, so he designed other monorails. He also helped design the Matterhorn bobsleds, the Submarine Voyage, and Autopia. His reputation became so great that he dubbed himself the Director of Special Vehicle Development.
Wow.
You know you have to be good to give yourself a name and a title.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right, you have to make sure that you can back up your product if you're going to give yourself a title.
I mean, I guess anyone can give themselves the title. It's just a matter of if anyone else in the world is actually going to use
How seriously
title.
are you taking with it?
Yeah.
So the Mark I design had a rocket ship bubble on the front of the car. And they came in red and blue, and each train had 3 cars. 10 large pneumatic tires were used for movement, and then there were 44 smaller tires for stabilization. We talked about the basic idea of how a monorail worked.
Yeah.
We'll talk specifically about how the Disney monorail works. To gain motion, copper and steel bus bars get a 600-volt current from the stabilizing beam. Charge is in all of the cars, not just the front car.
Okay.
So it's not just one car pulling all of them. They all have motion. They're all getting their electric current.
Okay.
Each train had 4 100-horsepower engines. And although they don't operate at max speed, the Mark I could reach up to 50 miles per hour. It usually ran at about 30 miles per hour.
Okay.
As mentioned, the Disneyland version was built 3/5 scale of the original Allweg model, and giant concrete columns spread 110 feet apart were made to support the beam. And since it is electric, there are no pollutants or emissions. Each mile of construction cost over $1 million to make.
And that's like back 1950s, 1960s?
Yes, that's over $8 million per mile in today's dollars.
Wow.
There was one issue on the day the monorail was presented. What do you think it was?
Like presented like the idea or opened?
The day it was opened.
Oh, goodness.
I'm just curious what you think the big issue was.
I don't know. I feel like it's going to be kind of something silly.
You're right, it's silly.
Okay.
The scissors to cut the ribbon wouldn't cut, so Walt had to tear the ribbon himself, but the actual ride didn't have any issues on opening day.
Well, that's good. That was cheating. Well, that wasn't the issue with the monorail.
Hey, it was part of the monorail. It was meant to present it. Walt had to tear the ribbon for people to get on.
That's funny.
Walt saw the success of the monorail as a critical step of creating efficient travel for the future, geared towards his Epcot ideas.
Yep.
How much have you heard about the e-ticket?
mean I've heard the term.
I'm not going to lie. Whenever I heard the word e-ticket, my mind immediately goes to electronic ticket.
Oh, I just think about like when we travel and we have our plane tickets on my app on my phone or something, so.
You're a little bit closer than I was. The monorail was extremely popular. It was not seen as a means to transport around the park, but it was an attraction. At the time, it was also not free to ride.
Oh.
So the e-ticket was basically the golden ticket, and it wasn't cheap for its time. So the e-ticket was literally a class of ticket to buy to ride the monorail.
Wow.
Preceded by A, B, C, D tickets.
Oh, okay.
And the e-ticket allowed the holder to ride the latest and greatest attractions, and it didn't even exist until the monorail arrived.
I'm guessing it wasn't cheap.
Not for its time. I couldn't find a price on it, but they did say for its time that was an expensive thing. It was like a premier access ticket for those rides. And they eventually added other attractions to be e-ticket rides. That included the submarine voyage and the Matterhorn bobsleds.
Okay.
So the e-ticket didn't even exist until the monorail arrived. And other e-ticket attractions included the submarine voyage and the Matterhorn bobsleds. We'll start looking into the Mark II and the Mark III at Disneyland. So now we're starting to look into the revisions to the attraction.
Okay.
So the idea behind the monorail was not just to get people from point A to point B. It was meant to allow guests to take in the park as they rode by. It went right through Tomorrowland, and the goal was for people to get a good view of the different areas of the park that it built up more excitement. Its popularity told Walt that it needed to become more of a park experience than just a way to move around. Moving on to the Mark II. The Mark II had 4 cars instead of 3, and they added an extra train to the fleet of trains from 2 to 3. They added the color yellow to the existing red and blue. For the most part, the trains of the Mark II were cosmetically the same as the Mark I, except that the bubble on the front of the car was bigger, and this was the look from 1961 to 1969. And the tracks expanded to go to the Disneyland Hotel.
Okay.
The Mark III, introduced in 1968, added a green car, and it offered a streamlined design with better efficiency. Adding another car and trains to the fleet increases the capacity limits that you have.
Yeah.
So every time they're revising the monorail train and the monorail design,
Yeah.
they're increasing the capacity.
So is this only like one train on the track at a time?
Currently, yes.
Okay, currently at this point in time.
Right. Now they have more than one train in the fleet. They simultaneously move around.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
Because like most rides have, different sets of cars, and you'll have them all kind of running just at different increments.
Right.
So.
And so remember, the Mark II, they moved from 2 trains to 3 trains.
Oh, I thought you meant like cars, not total. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Okay. We on the same page now?
Yes, I'm following.
Okay. The focus on this model was to increase the guest experience. So the windows were larger so you could look out and take more in. This one cost more than $2 million to make, and it lasted until 1987 before getting phased out. The name that they had on these monorails had initially given credit to its original design, called the Disneyland Allweg monorail system. By the 70s, Allweg had been closed for almost a decade, so Walt changed the name to just the Disneyland monorail system.
Makes sense.
Right. At this point, why are we giving credit to something that's no longer in existence?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to keep moving up in design. We're getting to the Mark V and the Mark VII. The Mark V debuted in September of 1987. The Mark V colors were blue, orange, purple, and red. And they switched to a fiberglass frame, which lowered the weight of the tram and increased the efficiency. And the trains had onboard computers for performance logs. Biggest change in the Mark V? The doors opened automatically.
Oh. So
Mark
before, someone had to open
Someone
them?
had to manually open those doors.
Okay.
Really great feature of the Mark V. It had air conditioning.
Oh, even better.
Even better, because I cannot imagine sitting on a train with that many people with no air conditioning.
I was gonna say, so before were they literally like enclosed or was it like
Mhm.
open windows?
They were enclosed.
So it was just like a sauna,
Little
like a
hot
little hot
box.
box. That sounds awful.
The Mark V also got rid of the bumble window and instead used a design that looked more like a Learjet. Because at this point, the space race wasn't as big of a deal anymore, so the futuristic look fell out of popularity. And the Mark V was actually just the Mark I train with a new body. But that Mark V design lasted for 20 years. And in 2008, the Mark VII debuted.
Did we just not like number 6?
Apparently not.
Okay.
It went from Mark V to Mark VII in 2008, which is the current design at Disneyland. It's a combination of the Mark I and the Mark VII, which has a spaceship design, but without the bubble windshield, mainly because the sleeker windshield is better for wind resistance.
Makes sense.
The 3 colors were orange, red, and blue. They fixed the seating so it doesn't feel like guests are in each other's faces, because Imagineers always looked at how to increase capacity in the same amount of space, but also making it comfortable for the guests. We've talked a lot about Disneyland Monorail. Obviously, there's one at Disney World, too.
Yeah.
How much do you know about Project X?
Again, it sounds familiar.
You know more than you think you do. Project X was the name of Epcot before it was Epcot.
Oh, okay.
This was meant to create the community of the future, and the monorail was going to be a critical piece of the puzzle for the future. Walt had the idea that guests would arrange their own travel to Orlando, where they would be greeted by a park employee, speaking to them in their native language no less. This employee would have their itinerary, and they would take the monorail to the city of tomorrow. So remember, Walt had this vision of what he wanted Epcot to be. That's not the Epcot we got when it opened in the 80s.
Yeah.
Roy had changed it drastically. So he had this idea of this futuristic experience that we didn't get to see. But once inside the city, the People Mover would accommodate transportation.
Yay, People Mover.
Hooray for the People Mover. This is an idea that it sounds impressive even by today's standards. If I got to Disney World and there was someone with my itinerary taking me into the city of tomorrow and had my whole trip planned, that's pretty impressive and
in your native language.
in your native language, no less.
I mean, we have people from literally all over the world coming to Disney World and Disneyland.
Exactly.
So, yes.
So Walt's coming up with this idea, it was much more impressive. Again, keeping in mind that Roy is the one who changed the idea of Epcot away from Walt's vision. There were other challenges building the monorail in Florida because it had to be built over water.
Okay.
As we all know, Walt passed before Disney World opened in 1971. But with several generations of the monorail already in existence, Imagineers had an idea of how to implement the design in Florida. However, Florida had different obstacles. In Florida, the monorail had to be built to move the guests over what's known as the Seven Seas Lagoon to get to the park. While boats would have been the more logical solution, park guests expected a monorail like there was in Disneyland. Walt's death. We know that happened in 1966. And the original ideas of Project X couldn't be sustained without Walt's drive. One newspaper even stated that Epcot died 10 minutes after Walt's body had cooled.
Oh, that's so sad.
That's very sad. It was a very blunt statement, but also very accurate, because Epcot was not what Walt had initially envisioned when it opened.
I get it, but at the same time, I feel like Walt would still approve. Like, he always said he made a brand, the brand Walt Disney. And I feel like the brand did a good job of taking his original ideas of a futuristic world, you know, and turning that into at least parts of Epcot. Maybe not like the world tour kind of part of Epcot, but...
I agree, but at that time, you think about it, he had all these grandiose ideas, and then he died, so in that moment, everybody's looking at it saying, well, now his ideas are dead too.
Yeah, it just sounds so grumpy.
It does. But Roy delayed his retirement to see that Walt Disney World opened, and Bob Gurr once again took the lead on the Disney World monorail and made the Mark IV. It was expected that he take advantage of having to transport guests over the body of water, with the idea in mind that the monorail would make guests feel like they were leaving the real world behind. So he was basically told, make the water part of the experience.
Gotcha. So we're kind of talking about that area of, like, when we've gone to Magic Kingdom in Florida, you had the option of taking like the little ferry boat to Magic Kingdom or the monorail.
Or the monorail. Exactly. So the Mark IV blueprints that Walt left behind were very vague. This was not accidental. Walt did that on purpose. He intentionally made his plans very general, even though he knew exactly what he wanted, because his management style was to lead his employees to his way of thinking instead of just telling them what to do. He felt this would help them see the same ideas and pros of those ideas that he knew all along. Gurr knew that Disneyland's monorail was successful, so there weren't too many changes to the Disney World model. A big challenge was space. The Disneyland monorail covered 2.5 miles, while the Walt Disney World model would cover 14.7 miles.
It's a bit more.
And to accommodate a larger guest capacity, Disney World uses a dual beam system. Land only has a single beam.
Okay. So like two, like, kind of next to each other?
Exactly. So it's still the single beam monorail, but there's two separate beams to move traffic around since there's more people there.
Okay, makes
and a bigger
sense.
Space. The track expanded in 1982 to accommodate the stop for Epcot. The Mark IV had a fleet of 10 trains with 5 cars on each. Now, looking at the trains at Disneyland, all the trains had distinguishing colors. The trains at Disney World have a distinguishing colored stripe.
Okay.
And if you look at that on our son's monorail train in his room, they're gray with the stripe across the top.
Okay.
Each train cost $6 million to make.
Ooh.
And the Mark IV remained in effect until 1989. Again, we're skipping numbers here. Let's look at the Mark VI of Disney World.
Oh, see, that's where the 6 went.
The Mark VI is the current fleet that is in operation at Disney World. Remember I told you there is another monorail in the United States. I don't remember ever seeing it. We've been here before. But the same fleet is actually used in Las Vegas, but it's just a different appearance.
I'm trying to think.
I don't remember ever seeing a monorail in Las Vegas.
I don't either, and we've been to Vegas
multiple times.
Yeah,
So now we need to keep an eye out for it when we go.
Keep an eye out.
So Las Vegas contracted Bombardier Transportation to build the same model that's used in Orlando. This model is less expensive. It only costs $3.5 million to build each train. There's a dozen trains in the fleet, and each train has 6 cars, and there's a capacity of 361 per train. It used to be 365 people, with 4 people allowed in the cab where the pilot drove.
Okay.
In 2009, 2 monorails collided, killing one of the pilots. As a result, as a precaution, guests are no longer allowed in the cab.
Okay.
That's why we dropped from 365 to 361.
I mean, makes
understandable
sense.
Reason.
Yeah.
The monorail legacy. World-famous Imagineer Marty Sklar, the one who parked his car by the Jungle Cruise and everybody saw it.
Yes.
He once said that Walt had one foot in the past. He loved nostalgia, but he was also looking to the future, and the monorail fit into both of those worldviews. While the technology is an homage to the turn of the century, the design seems to give a futuristic feel of a society that hasn't been created yet. The idea of a monorail showed how far into the future Walt looked. He anticipated the problem of roads and too many people using them. The monorail would get guests to different parts of the park without having to worry about car traffic. The amount of miles people have ridden on the monorail equates to 30 round trips to the moon. This is a statistic that Walt would most likely love, with how much he loved the idea of space travel.
I bet.
Incidents on the monorail.
Yay!
I still couldn't find a whole lot. This is actually a pretty safe thing, but it is a little bit more exciting than my incidents on the Jungle Cruise.
Okay, so I'm still winning with Space Mountain.
You are still winning, but the most famous incident on the monorail was by a man named Thomas Guy Cleveland, and he died on June 17th, 1966 at the age of 19.
On the monorail?
It was grad night, and he climbed the fence onto the track to sneak into the park with the idea that he would climb down once inside. A security guard did see him and was shouting at him that a train was coming, and he was ignoring it. He finally decided, hey, maybe I should listen to the security guard who's telling me that a train is coming my way. So he did try to climb down and get out of the way, but he didn't get far enough down before the train struck him and dragged him down 30 to 40 feet of the track.
Oh my gosh, that is sad and awful.
It's very sad and awful, but don't try to sneak in the park by climbing a train track.
Yikes. Wasn't that kind of recently, too? I feel like that wasn't
No, that was 1966.
Oh, 1966. Gosh. Okay.
We are going to talk a little bit more recent. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. A gentleman by the name of Austin Wunenberg died on July 5th, 2009. He was a 21-year-old senior at Stetson University studying computer science, and he was also a pilot on the Disney World monorail. One of the monorails was going in reverse and crashed into his. So he passed away. Then the least exciting actually happened really recently. In May of 2021, at Disney World, a construction vehicle hit the track, suspending service for the day.
Oh, dear.
Thoughts on the monorail?
I mean, it's pretty cool. I really wish, at some point, America could take something like that and utilize something like that more.
Agreed. It would be nice if that was an actual transportation system, because I've ridden public transportation in other cities in our state, and it's bumpy, it's jerky. But those few minutes I'm on the monorail to go to a park, nice and smooth, it's a relaxing trip, and it really is one of the attractions there. I consider it one of the rides. It's an experience that I enjoy.
Well, it is, because I'm pretty sure we've always gone on it, literally, it's not a get from point A to point B. We're like, ooh, let's just go on the monorail.
To take in the scenery, which is exactly what it was intended for, was to help you take in the park and not just get you from point A to point B.
Yeah. So it's pretty neat.
It is very neat, and I'm excited to go ride it now, because now I'm going to look at all these details again. And
I know. I feel like it's definitely was above its time. It was a pretty advanced thing for when they started to make it.
Which was the point of it, was to be ahead of its time and to show people this is the future of transportation.
I honestly still feel like it's ahead of its time, though, just because this is something that we haven't utilized at all.
We're still not using it as a regular travel means.
Yeah.
I really want to watch the Simpsons episode now, where they bring in the monorail.
Well, obviously, we clearly need to do that.
And it's based on The Music Man, where the guy comes in to scam the town, so it's really funny.
Well, we'll have to do that.
We'll
Thankfully, it'll be on our Disney Plus.
We can easily watch it. That's it for this week's episode of Ashes and Will Do Disney.
Don't forget, we need your mouse tales. If you have a funny, weird, exciting, or just a favorite Disney memory, send it to ashesandwilldodisney@gmail.com so we can read them on the show.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Ashes and Will Do Disney. This is a public group to follow. We're also on YouTube at Ashes and Will Do Disney.
Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and have a magical day.